This is the funniest ranking on the whole sheet to me because Lucas and I ranked him exactly the same at 17. It is Mr. Screen Pass, Zachariah Branch.
I don't even like Zachariah Branch, which is like the craziest thing.
Well,
I had no idea.
Well, it looks like you do, Lucas.
This guy's going to get touches, even if they have to be manufactured. I don't care about his route running. Like, I truly don't. This guy is just ridiculously explosive. That's at least fun.
Branch is like, you get home, and your girlfriend is like, hey, like I got you a Corvette. And you're like, oh my God. And you're like driving it and you're like, oh, like this is pretty fun. I can feel the breeze. I'm in my convertible. I feel like a boss. And then it's like the check engine light is flashing, smoke coming out of the front of the car. Like that is concerning. Maybe everything's fine. If you just don't check under the hood, everything could be fine. He's a 5-star recruit, early declare, with over 2 career yards per out run. And if you don't ask any other questions, that sounds pretty great.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in with us again. Happy you guys have enjoyed the last couple of shows. Big shout out to JJ for hopping on the last show. Very sad I had to miss that, but don't worry, the full team is here and ready to hand out consensus rookie rankings. We're going to discuss the discrepancies that we have, the highest, the lowest, some of our favorites, highlights, lowlights. I'll send it to Jacob. He can kind of set the table for us and lead us right in.
Before the show today, I had everybody send over their top 36 rookie rankings, and I assembled together about a consensus rankings sheet. So we've sorted them by everybody's average ranking. And so we're going to walk through, we're going to give you all our 1 through 36 consensus today. We're obviously not going to talk in depth about every single player, but we'll let you know where you guys stand. I've also broken up some tiers, just where the consensus numbers started to emerge. That doesn't mean that each of us individually has those exact tiers, but that's how they sorted themselves as a consensus. And then we're going to pick a few spots where we're out here to get into a discussion of where some of us were a little higher on certain guys, a little lower on certain guys. So yeah, let's have at it.
All right, so obviously, number one, it's consensus. There's going to be nothing really as an outlier here, but number two seems to have been one of the ones that were like right around that 2-3 as expected, is a little bit more all over the place. So let's talk about those three. Tyson, Tate, Mendoza. I mean, even Lemon. Lucas, you have Lemon sitting here at 3. So, Ryan, you and I are the highest on Tyson, so why don't we talk through Tyson?
Yeah, so first I'll say that this tier of receivers for me is very tight. The way that I test this in my own mind is if one of them got the worst landing spot possible, like one goes to the Dolphins or something. Yeah, just imagine the worst ever landing spot and they all go within 5 picks of each other. I just rank the worst landing spot as the lowest between these top 3 receivers. To me, all of them have very similar overall analytical profiles, so I don't think you have to get too caught up on the order, but yeah, I do feel that Tyson is my wide receiver 1. Things that kind of separate him: he had probably the second best true freshman season of any receiver in this class, which is nice to see. He's top 3 this decade by yards per out run in a season at age 18. It's on a list with Brock Bowers, George Pickens, Amon-Ra St. Brown. The freshman efficiency is nice for Tyson. He has probably the best peak season of this entire class in 2024, and he did that after completely tearing up his knee. So I know the injury concerns are what people cite with Jordyn Tyson a lot of the time, but hey, he was outperforming every other receiver in this class, even after his most major injury. 2025 was somewhat mediocre, but it was a lot better through the first 7 games before he suffered the hamstring injury, and that kind of just tanked his season-long stats. Just over his entire career, you're seeing a fairly good per route profile for a round 1 wide receiver. He's around the 77th percentile among round 1 guys over the past decade by career first downs per route run. So yeah, kind of whatever way you slice it, Tyson is always at least very good and sometimes kind of borders on elite in terms of his analytical profile. So I have him at number 1, but I would totally understand if anybody is like shuffling their opinions after the draft or just wants to focus more on one aspect of Makai Lemon or Carnell Tate that's more important to them. I'm not shaming anybody here for the order you have these guys drafted in. And the only other part of this tier I'll comment on is Fernando Mendoza. My inclination is always to be a little bit lower on the quarterbacks in Dynasty Superflex in rookie drafts. Jacob has talked about this a bunch. I'm sure he'll talk about it today as well, but I think they tend to get a little bit overdrafted, especially for a prospect like Mendoza, where he's not like the most fantasy-friendly quarterback. I would always just kind of rather take the shot with this premium draft capital on what I see as like the higher upside bet, which is just going to be a wide receiver. There are just kind of so many like good but not great pocket passing quarterbacks that just sit around a mid-first valuation like year after year in Dynasty. I think that's kind of what you're hoping for if you take Mendoza anywhere from the 102 to the 105. So I'm just going to rank him 105 because of that.
Yeah, the best part about Mendoza for me is that having him at 4 here, I really don't ever expect to need to use the 104 to get him. I feel like the tight ends and the wide receivers, there might even far chance, but let's say another running back jumps up and really pushes up the board via draft capital, landing spot, whichever. I really feel like Mendoza is just going to be one of those guys that you don't have to use those premium picks. I have him ranked there because I'm not fully sold on Lemon here as the wide receiver 3, so I couldn't really put him ahead. So I like Mendoza there. Especially, again, I'm the really gross second quarterback. I'm going to need Mendoza on multiple teams when the Aaron Rodgers and Geno Smiths finally age out of the league in 10 years. So I'm eventually going to need him. So that's kind of my rationale for that. Jacob, let's talk about your set of first tier here. Lemon at 4, Mendoza 5, Tate here at 2, Tyson at 3. So let's talk Tate first and work it down.
Yeah, I have the exact same 2 through 5 with Ryan, with the exception of just flipping Tate and Tyson. And honestly, purely just based on how they look as analytical profiles, I probably prefer Tyson as my wide receiver 1 as well. The reason I go with Tate here is I'm ranking these now sort of how I would do it in a pre-draft, rookie draft. And I just see a little bit more risk with Tyson's profile. There's more of a split in the film community on him, some being quite high on his upside, some have him lower, even a tier beneath these two players. I don't really agree with that, but it's just sort of the vibes that I'm imbibing as I read the different takes on him. His reception perception came out today, not quite as high as the other 2 receivers in this tier. And then mostly the concern with me is just that I think his draft capital is probably the least secure of the 3 based on the injury situation, which is both the past injuries and now the current hamstring injury that kept him from performing at the combine, from performing at his pro day. And so if you were to tell me, one of these 3 receivers slides down into the 20s while the other 2 go in the top 12, I would guess that that's Jordyn Tyson. So at this point, I'm just feel like Tate has the cleanest profile. It's not necessarily hitting the peaks of some of the others. His career yards per route run is substantially lower than Lemon and Tyson's, but I'm pretty willing to build in the excuse of playing next to the greatest wide receiver prospect of probably literally all time in Jeremiah Smith, and I'm comfortable with the fact that he's can be both worse than Jeremiah Smith and better than these other 2 wide receivers, or better than plenty of his potential NFL competition even. So I have him at 2 just based on the cleanness of the profile. I think it's very easy to see how he fits, and I think he's going to have a chance to get drafted even as high as the top 5. So that's where I lean. I'd echo everything that Ryan said about Mendoza and why I have him tied for the lowest with Ryan. As an example, his OC coming up this year, or his head coach, play calling head coach, Clint Kubiak, had Sam Darnold last year, who of course had an exceptional season. They won the Super Bowl. The Sam Darnold fans were redeemed in fantasy football, he was like a mid to low end quarterback too, which is totally fine for the value that Sam Darnold held going into last season, which was like an early to mid second. But Mendoza is going to hold a lot more value than that. I think has pretty similar levels of athleticism to Sam Darnold. It's probably entering into a low PROE offense. And I would say that it would be an incredibly positive result if Mendoza is as effective as Darnold was last year in his first year or maybe even his second year. So I just think there's a misalignment with how quarterback youth is valued because the position is on such a longer timeline, right? If Sam Darnold was a wide receiver at his age, he'd already be out of his young stage. He'd be into his later years of his career. But as a quarterback, this is a guy who's probably going to start in the NFL for now 5, 6, I mean, if he's really successful, maybe 10 more years. And so the premium that is put on youth at the position just doesn't really make that much sense given how much longer careers are overall. And so unless I'm getting a quarterback that has the potential to be a round one startup guy, or at least project that way based on their mobility, I'm probably not very interested in targeting quarterbacks early in rookie drafts. I'm more interested, as we'll get to later, on targeting the guys that are in a price range where just merely being a multi-year starting quarterback is a win, right? But I think it's at a premium, so I end up a little bit lower on Mendoza.
And I think that's, again, a completely fair assessment with quarterback. I mean, only 15 points per game last year for Sam, so you got to think 15 points per game for Mendoza feels like a win in his rookie year, but you're right, probably not at 1.5, right? 1.5, 1.6. So, Lucas, welcome back. Let's talk about your first tier here. You have Mendoza at 2. We have Tate here at 5, Tyson 4, Lemon 3. So let's talk, I guess, carry on Mendoza here, and then we'll talk these wide receivers. Why 2?
I do think my Mendoza ranking is more of an indictment on how I view these wide receivers and just having that much more confidence that Mendoza is going to be somebody who's consistently contributing to my dynasty teams in a draft in which there's a lot of unknowns here. We're going into it coming out of the combine where there was so much hype because of all these athletic, records that were being set by all these different draft prospects, whether that's Sonny Styles or Sadiq or Stowers or whoever. Like, there were a lot of really big performances there. And I do think that kind of overshadowed a little bit some of the concerns that we see in some of these profiles. Now, I really like these top 3 wide receivers, but in comparison to some of the other wide receiver prospects we've seen over the years, they're just overall a tier below for me. And it's more of a safety concern. That's how I kind of rank these top 5, was a little bit of upside, a little bit of safety. So Mendoza, I think that he's going to be an NFL starter for a very long time. I think he's going to be somebody who's consistently contributing to your teams. And while I like some of these other guys, I just don't have that same confidence to make the bet on it today that these are going to be people who are going to be consistently contributing to your teams. Now, whenever we're moving to wide receivers, that's why I put Lemon as the first wide receiver. He's the person who I think is the safest pick to be at least a wide receiver 2. It's going to be consistently contributing to your teams. I think he's going to be a PPR nightmare for some groups. He can win on the outside, even though people look at him primarily as a slot wide receiver. He's awesome on the outside. So that's why I have him at 1. Now, the wide receiver with the biggest upside, I do think, is Tyson. Ryan outlined a lot of really good arguments in his favor. I don't really have anything to add on to it. My biggest concern with watching Tyson is I don't see that natural pass catcher. He doesn't have the elite ball skills that I would really want from somebody with his type of profile. So that's my biggest concern. I know that there's all these things out there about missed tackles forced per reception. I'm not as concerned about that really, just with this profile. He does get separation, but I don't see from the film take that just as natural of a receiver as some of these others. And with Tate, I just see somebody who's going to be a really awesome wide receiver 2 on a team. He is going to be the most premium wide receiver 2 that exists. I don't know if he in and of himself can be a true wide receiver 1 on a team for years to come. I do like him. I think that, it's a really, really lazy take, but I'm going to say he's the next T. Higgins. And, you know, that's awesome. T. Higgins is great. If I'm putting a bet on anyone to come out of this being a wide receiver one, being a wide receiver who can get into the first round, it's going to be Tyson. But I still like the safety of Lemon.
Let's take a look at the second tier of players that seems to be blocked off with Sadiq, Concepcion, Stowers, Cooper Jr., Boston, and Coleman. So we get the second running back here towards really the second half of tier 2, or the back end even of tier 2, which is unusual for a draft class. So I find this tier to be probably the most difficult to rank for myself. So I'm interested to hear what you guys have. Jacob, where do you want to start here with the second tier of players?
Well, first of all, I love that you're calling it tier 2, even though it's actually tier 3. It's just Jeremiah Love is so in his own tier that we're not even factoring him in. It's just he's like tier 0.
He's the pedestal.
It's too bad because he's quite a good player, but because there's no debates around him, like I've never seen a player that's this good get discussed less frequently on rookie podcasts. He just doesn't exist because everyone's like, yeah, everybody's got Love at 1. Anyway, next. So shout out to him for being good. But anyway, this is where we get into, we just talked about the top 3 wide receivers. So why don't we keep on at the wide receiver position? There's definitely not a consensus overall on who the wide receiver 4 through 5 through 6 is, although there's getting to be kind of a cluster in the mock draft cycle. The 3 of us on the top of the screen here, I think all have Concepcion at wide receiver 4. Lucas, you were the highest on the guy that is getting the most buzz, really, of anyone in all of the drafts right now. So why don't you lay out the case for Omar Cooper Jr.?
So with him, the age is a little bit of a concern, but this is a guy who just wins. And in like this group of wide receivers, I don't see like that dip with him that we saw with Concepcion. That's my biggest concern with him. Boston, I just don't look at him as somebody who can consistently win at the NFL level. He doesn't necessarily run the best routes. He doesn't separate as well as I would want somebody who I think is going to be going that high. And Cooper just does it. Like, he is an all-out stud who, if he was coming out, you know, really early or was a high recruit, I think everybody would be just uber pumped about him. But that's my biggest thing with him. I know it's not like the best argument in the world, and it's a lot more vibes than anything else. But whenever I'm looking at this next tier, I'm looking for a wide receiver that I can kind of tell a story with, that he's going to go in and is going to outperform what some of the expectations are with him. And to me, that's Cooper. I want somebody who's just going to go out there and is just going to consistently win, is tough, can make something happen after the catch. I do think that he is a little bit more landing spot dependent than some of these other wide receivers. And maybe I'm making a rank in a bet that he's going to have a better landing spot than we necessarily are expecting some of the others. Like, I think Kansas City would be amazing for him, but we always say Kansas City there. If the Rams are looking for their career wide receiver 2 after Devontae Adams, I think Omar Cooper is awesome there. I don't necessarily want him in Buffalo just because I don't want any wide receiver in Buffalo, because I think that's where wide receivers go to die right now. But I do think that given the right landing spot, he has the potential to be finishing as a top 3 wide receiver in this class whenever we look back on it in a year or 2 years.
Yeah, I didn't have Cooper as high among wide receivers, but I actually had him the highest overall, which surprised me a little bit. And as I'm a little lower on the tight ends. But yeah, he comes out 2.47 career yards per route run. The only wide receivers higher in the class are the top 3, or actually not Tate, so Lemon and Tyson, and then his teammate, of course, Elijah Surratt, which speaks to some degree positively for him. The raw production profile is not as strong. And so he kind of falls into this archetype of player where the per route metrics are outpacing some of the overall metrics. And we've seen plenty of failures at that archetype, but we've also seen some success with that archetype recently with Alad McConkey, and then probably most famously, of course, Puka Nacua. Cooper's a guy who played from the slot. He also played outside. So archetypally, I think he can play as an every down wide receiver. He seems to be pacing towards round 1 draft capital. So I don't know that the lack of routes are systemic, which makes me pretty excited. I initially was, I think, a little lower on Cooper, and I've caught up over time, especially because his draft capital has really skyrocketed. And to me, if he's going ahead of Boston in the real NFL draft, or which seems plausible now, he's just passed him on mock draft database. I think that there's higher upside with Cooper. Boston, to me, looks like a more traditional avoid profile in terms of 4-year player who didn't really have any early production, albeit with really strong teammate competition in front of him. And then the peak production is fine, but not great. He just barely clears 2 yards per route run for his career. Cooper, meanwhile, has a few real strong attributes, which is the per route production, but also an elite, best-in-class forced missed tackle rate, and potentially looks like a guy who might be able to earn a lot of targets on separation abilities and might be able to add a lot after the catch. I think it's a higher upside profile. Not quite to the level of Concepcion, who I'll get Ryan and Tom to talk about in a second, but I come out a little bit more on the optimistic end of the Cooper steam train recently.
He just feels like more of a role player type, Khalil Shakir type, archetype player for me. The early production is really just non-existent. I think he gets a big boost on perception because of the miracle and magical run. Didn't really show up in some of the big games against some of the top ends, like the Ohio State, the Alabama, the Oregon games. He definitely has some splash plays, but to me, he just feels like a role player. And I'm not a film scout. I'm not even a college football scout. I just like a player that I'm probably going to have to draft at the back end of round 1 to not feel like a player that I would normally be drafting at like 2.7 and 2.6. And this is where I'm really having a hard time in general with this draft class, because a lot of these guys feel that way to me. But I feel like of the Indiana wide receivers, Cooper is just a little bit more of a, as Lucas mentioned, spot-dependent role player type. And I'm just not as interested in that profile.
So I will add on to there, year 3 is whenever we saw the big breakout for Cooper. That does align whenever Cignetti got there. I do think a better scheme really helped, a lot of the pieces at Indiana. So I don't want to hold too much against him, because Indiana was garbage before Cignetti got there. They just were. And so I don't know really what opportunity he had to fully come out and break out. So he got a good scheme in there, one that fit him and one that allowed him to actually flourish. So want to take that with a grain of salt with what his early
for sure
production was there. And I mean, we never really got to see Surratt without Cignetti. I believe he followed him basically everywhere he went there. So want to be a little bit careful with that. Don't want to do too much Cignetti effect, even though that's a really fun thing to use. But just to add on to there, Cooper's the wide receiver that I see, at least in these next tier, because we're going to see a lot of people who are really high upside. Another safer floor type wide receiver, I think, and one that while I think that he's dependent on the team, I think he's less dependent on needing to develop other skills. I think that he's going to be a really well-rounded wide receiver who can come in and going to be able to run really good routes. He doesn't need necessarily to always be schemed open, but I do think that he's going to need a scheme in which they allow a little bit more pace and spacing for him to work.
I just want to quickly jump in on Cooper. I laid out a lot of my points on Twitter today, arguing with David Gaudieri over this. And I would kind of echo what Jacob laid out, but I would focus more on the bust side of the very, what I would say is a risk reward boomer bust profile for Cooper. I reject the idea that his production at any time before his final season was anything to care about at all. His 2024 season would have been 16th percentile for a round 1 wide receiver by yards per team pass attempt. His final season was 47th percentile age adjusted, so that's a little bit better, but I also just get a little spooked with some of these receivers where they are going to get drafted like at the end of round 1, but it's kind of off the back of a season in which he saw a role change, which is that he moved into the slot, had 84% of his receiving yards in 2025 out of the slot after hardly playing the slot at all before that in his career. And they started throwing him all these screens. These aren't like bad things. Like Cooper he's a dynamic player. As Jacob mentioned, the missed tackles for stats are really, really good. But yeah, I just get a little squirrely when it's like, this is a player who before that his technically a redshirt junior season, but effectively his fourth season at the college level, wasn't thought of as much, was not productive really whatsoever, was less productive and efficient than his teammate that's going to go in round 3 in Elijah Surratt. I am just not that impressed by Cooper. The NFL's track record of these kind of like dynamic screen weapons getting steamed into round 1 after their senior year is like very, very mixed. You've got like Brandon Ayuk. There's hits. There's Brandon Ayuk for early declare guys. There's Drake London and Emeka Egbuka. But there's also like Treylon Burks, N'Keal Harry, Kevin White on those types of lists. So yeah, I'm just like a little more focused, I guess, on the downside. To be clear, I have Cooper as my rookie 109. He's my wide receiver 6. It's very close with him and Denzel Boston. I don't like Denzel Boston that much either, ultimately. But yeah, I just was a little bit more into like, okay, I understand why he didn't get on the field when you've got Jalen Polk, Jalen McMillan, Rome Odunze at Washington for his first 2 years. His junior season was noticeably more productive than Cooper's across most metrics. Like I'm just a little more comfortable with Boston, but I totally get it if you are saying I need to pick a future like top 18 fantasy wide receiver. Maybe you're a little higher chance with Cooper there. I get that thinking as well.
Why don't you touch on Concepcion a bit, because he is, other than Lucas, the 4th on all of our lists. I have him, and Ryan has him at 6th overall. Tom has him at 7th overall. Lucas at 10th overall. I'm definitely a big fan of his, and Ryan or Tom, why don't you share your thoughts on that guy?
I think mine's going to be way faster than what Ryan's is. The knee problem for me is a general concern. Another kind of role player type. I think his upside is actually really high, and if not for injury, if we knew he just had a clean bill of health, he would probably get pushed up a little bit for me in my overall rankings. But that's strictly where I'm at. I think the NFL is going to love him. I think he's going to move up rankings pretty quickly. But for now, it's the only thing I really have to make him as a separator is health.
Sure. So, I mean, on that, I'll say somebody posted a video of him like running routes today, and he looked really good to me. And I think to everybody who saw it and quote tweeted it and everything. So that's part of the reason why, like this time of year, I try to be more impervious to like the ups and downs of the prospect health. Like I would say the same thing with Jordyn Tyson. If it affects his draft stock, if it affects Concepcion's draft stock, at that point, I'll reevaluate, of course. But yeah, for now, I kind of think we run out of things to talk about in the prospect news cycle, and these things kind of get pushed to the forefront.
Well, that's
But like on Concepcion's profile itself, he had easily the best freshman season of anybody in this draft class. Freshman production isn't like the most predictive thing. It's very often like there was nobody else on your team, and that is certainly an argument you could make with Concepcion. But there's still like elite freshman seasons from CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like there's enough of these that it probably is a decent signal. And then your eval of Concepcion, I think, really just comes down to how much you're willing to excuse his 2024, where he was getting outproduced by projected round 4 or maybe projected round 5 tight end Justin Joly at NC State. My take is basically that I don't care that much. I kind of think NC State's offense that year was like a total farce. It was very much built around just like tight ends and H-backs and trick plays and a lot of like not NFL stuff. Concepcion's average depth of target was like 6.9 that year. They were just like throwing all these weird screens to him. They weren't letting him go downfield at all. He comes out and says that he's transferring to A&M because he wants to prove that he is a real receiver. He's not just a gadget guy. He can run a full route tree. And then he did. Like he backed it up. He put his money where his mouth was. He proved it. 2.25 receiving yards per team pass attempt as a 20-year-old junior, competing with a projected future round 2 pick as well on that Texas A&M team, Mario Craver. So yeah, I was pretty impressed by that campaign out of Concepcion. It was a better season than either Carnell Tate or Denzel Boston had at that age as well. The per route efficiency was amazing in that year and is another reason that I'm kind of willing to discount it being really bad in 2024. And like the cherry on top is that Brett Whitefield loves him. Basically everyone in the film community loves KC Concepcion is kind of the vibe I get. His reception perception came out today as well, and it was
did you see the Harmon
very, very
today?
positive.
He definitely, yeah.
Yeah, so just kind of all of that together coalesces into this is the player I'm most comfortable calling my rookie 106. I just feel the best about the overall talent. Yeah, it's really just the medicals that I think could like make this blow up in our face, but I'm still, even if Concepcion goes last off the board of Boston and Cooper, I'm probably still going to have him ranked higher, just because, yeah, I have more faith in the analytical profile as well. And yeah, so I know I'm talking a lot about this, but I do feel like Concepcion's analytical profile gets undersold by people, and he's just kind of seen as like the film bro favorite, but I don't think that is true at all. Right. I think it's pretty good.
I don't at all. I mean, he's the only guy that really, I mean, the second year sucks, but he's the only guy that has 2 years legit production, early breakout, early declare, and that second year weights a lot of the career numbers down, but he's still clearing the 2 yards per out run sort of quote unquote minimum threshold, and doing it on hard mode as a 3-year player. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of Concepcion, and I have him. Currently, I have him in a tier of his own in my rankings, where he's the only player I have as being worth a late first. I have every player starting at 7 or later being worth an early second or less. So he's currently the only guy that's in my late first tier of my rankings.
And
I was going to say, so he's the player that I'm most scared of making me look silly. As we were doing this, and to give him some grace during the second year, there was so much that NC State did around Grayson McCall. Like, he was going to be their offense. They invested so heavily in him for him to get injured in the second game of the season. I mean, he tore it up during the first game. I think it was 9 for like 120 or something like that. It was just ridiculous. But then going up against a top 5 defense on the season in the second game, McCall gets hurt. It was just so hard for NC State to kind of establish what their identity was the rest of the season. They were just piecing that offense together. So I should give him a little bit more grace there. The thing that gets me like most excited was that A&M used him in the return game more, and he was electric there. So I do think that speaks to even more confirmation about how good he can be after the catch. He has excellent field vision. We'll see how well he ends up separating, or if somebody's going to like pigeonhole him. Like, if he gets a really boring offensive coordinator, they just going to pigeonhole him into a slot and not let him really do as much stuff. We'll see. But he is the person I'm most scared of making me look silly.
Yeah, I had him one spot different than you, Ryan, and you, Jacob, and it's simply because of the tight end premium effect with someone like Sadiq. Like, I want to talk about somebody with enough insane upside that could potentially jump into the mid to early second in startups. We see how fast, really explosive, really good tight ends can be. I think he can be that. I think he can be rookie Sam Laporta, right? That boosts him into that high upside second round. It's the only real reason I have Sadiq ahead. And I actually really struggled not putting Sadiq in the tier above. I just couldn't quite put him past Lemon. So that's really the big separator for me for that. I think the last player we should really talk about here is Coleman. Lucas, you have him at 8. Ryan and Jacob, you both have him firmly at 11. He sits at 10 for me. So, Lucas, give us the bull case with Coleman for you.
He's just freaking awesome at football. That's long story short. Like, he is an excellent running back. If it weren't for Jeremiah Love, I would be confidently saying he is the best, like, pure runner in this class. He knows how to play that position. He blocks well. He is a threat out of the backfield. He makes people miss. He doesn't have that, like, top end elite high end gear that you would love to see that gets people really excited, that, you know, really like changes up where people have running backs ranked after the combine. But this guy's just so freaking solid. I think that he's going to come in. He is going to be a long-term starter. I think that he, as I said earlier, he has enough in his receiving profile to get you excited that he can do more out of the backfield. He can be a more complete running back. And this guy, he was good at Arizona. He had elite per touch metrics, takes it to Washington. It was a little bit of an adjustment year in his junior season, and then he still just absolutely killed it his senior year. This guy was Washington's offense. So I am really, really excited about him. I wish that we had some more like verifiable testing numbers, although that would probably end up driving his price down. But he will most likely be my most drafted player at the end of round 1. And I'm going to be perfectly fine with that. Like, this is a guy I think is going to be a contributor for a really long time. And we're going to come out of this class knowing just how great Jeremiah Love is. And he puts everybody else to shame. Completely understand that. But I think we're also going to be sitting here looking at Coleman going, how did we let this guy fall so far? I think we're just getting lulled to sleep a little bit because we don't have those verified testing numbers. And like I said, Love is just... He's awesome. He does make everybody else look a little silly here, but Coleman is just that good. And if you are drafting any other running back before him, I need you to look in the mirror and rethink your life choices. This is the clear RB2 in the class.
Well, I'll note that all of us have him as the RB2 in the class, but the reason why I'm lower on him than you and have I think the smallest gap between him and some of the other backs is that some of the people that are going to have to reevaluate their life choices, if Lucas is correct, are NFL general managers, because it seems incredibly improbable at present that he will be the second NFL running back selected. On mock draft database as of right now, Jadarian Price sits at 47, Mike Washington sits at 65, and Jonah Coleman sits at 92, which would be right on the day 2, day 3 borderline. I'm pretty comfortable ranking Coleman as my RB2, even with that expected disparity. So even if Price goes in round 2 and Washington goes late 2, early 3, and Coleman goes late 3, early 4, I might still have Coleman as my RB2 pending landing spots, because I do think he is by far the most complete of that group, and I'll throw Emmett Johnson in that category too, where he's the guy that has proven that he can handle a legitimate college workload on a real program. He can do so with not elite efficiency, but with at least average creation metrics overall, and he can add in the pass blocking, or the pass work. So I definitely think he's the type of running back where if an NFL team drafts him, you know, NFL teams draft running backs for different reasons. He's not a guy you draft as a specialist. He's a guy you do draft as an actual bell cow, as a player you intend to give 250 touches to, not as a 8-touch a game change of pace guy, and I think that behooves him. But yeah, I think it's hard for me to rank him. I mean, I have him ranked in my first round, which shows what I think of this class, but it's really hard to rank a player who has, I think, like a 40% chance to fall to day 3 higher than I currently have him. And so I'm deferring a little bit to the consensus by having him and Price back-to-back in my rankings. But, I mean, still not deferring that much, because I ultimately do have him ahead of Price, despite Price having about a 45 pick higher draft expectancy.
I'm right there with you in terms of his ranking and his average. Like, the consensus is definitely pushing that agenda a little bit here. Let's go to the next tier of players. This is headlined by Simpson. We also have Price, Surratt. My favorite in this class, Mr. Razzle Brazzle. We've got Washington Jr. and Claire. The tight end 3 makes it into this tier. I will start with Simpson, which it's interesting to me that I am the lowest on him as the quarterback guy. I think this is a little bit of, I think he's terrible. I think that he's a 1-year starter, really, that's going to get pushed into playing far too early. He is somebody that I am going to roster 100% of after year 1. I think that if he does land in that first round, Jacob, I saw your tweet about this, how we've had so many non-round 1 quarterbacks be talked about it. We had, like you mentioned, Levis, Willis, etc., but we have had Howell was the other one, and then we have had some others that actually did creep in. All of those players were more productive than Simpson was. So I have a hard time. We joked with the big Zamboni himself, Brett Whitefield, that he just feels like a New York Jet. I'm going to be way out. Again, I'm going to roster 100%, but in year 2 and beyond. I think his price to what I'm predicting is what is pushing him down. Again, I think players like Brazzle and Surratt and potentially even a Mike Washington Jr. can pass him in rookie drafts pretty easily with just landing spot alone. So we could end up in a situation where somebody like Simpson is, I don't know, an LA Ram as the next up to Matthew Stafford, and then I could understand. I don't think that I don't see that as being the likely outcome. That's the hopeful outcome. So I'm gonna be out until year 2 probably.
Well, I had Simpson at 13, and if I was doing these this morning instead of literally yesterday, I probably would even put him a couple spots higher just with the barrage of Ty Simpson content we've gotten today. Half of it
That's
from
fair.
people who share the CAA talent agency. Shout out Dan Orlovsky. Anyways, surely that has nothing
source
to do
for
with
quarterback.
But look, I mean, I mentioned it earlier. I said my early second tier starts at pick 7, and we got into it with Fernando Mendoza, where I was saying, well, I don't know if I would pay this much, because if he's just kind of a QB2, but he's just a really young version, I can get a 29-year-old QB2 for an early second in Dynasty. I mean, if Ty Simpson can just be a starter, for an early 2 price tag, now it's a win in a way that you're not paying that premium. And in most classes, this kind of 2-1, 2-2 range is where I'd be willing to draft this kind of profile. But if he actually does continue to get projected as a round 1 guy who is going to probably start for multiple seasons, then in this class, I honestly think his range starts at 7 or 8 being a reasonable pick, because I'm basically just trying to treat these late firsts as though they're early seconds within the context of this class, and not tie myself to the number in front of the screen. So I'm not a Simpson guy. He's a 1-year starter. The track record on 1-year starters, especially later 1-year starters, is poor. The ones that have succeeded typically have ridiculous production in that 1 year, like a Joe Burrow. We're looking at Simpson as being a middling efficiency, short time window guy who's mobile-ish. Not really my favorite profile to be drafting, but Tyler Shock, I brought up on our mock draft with Theo, is a guy who I think had a very questionable profile coming into the NFL, but projected to get starts year 1, had a really strong rookie year. We'll see what happens with the rest of his career. But if you did take Tyler Shock in the second round of rookie drafts, you've already won. You have the chance to sell him for substantially more than what you paid. And Do I think it's plausible that Simpson could start for 8 games next year and look halfway decent and be a locked-in week 1 starter for 2027, and so you get a profit off of that? That seems pretty plausible. And based on the profiles we're talking about in this late 1, early 2 range, I think it's totally fine to be a Simpson guy in a market sense, even if you're not really fully a believer in his talent.
You really hit it with the Shuck thing. He got the run out. He got the Kellen Moore perfect spot with a shaky starter going in to the season to give him that opportunity, and not just give him the opportunity, but again, succeed under a coach who we know gets a lot of production out of the position. That's what I think Ty Simpson needs, is either that opportunity long-term, or again, to sit behind somebody like Stafford with the strong OC. I can see, like, the Browns is nightmare fuel. The Jets is nightmare fuel. Like, there's so few spots to potentially get
Browns.
Yeah,
starts.
I think the Browns are like exactly what you're hoping for. I think you're hoping.
I'm in with him on the Browns.
No.
I think you're hoping that he goes to like the Browns or the Cardinals on like a day. Like the last couple picks of day 1, they trade up into it to grab him. He's maybe not like the presumptive day 1 starter, but has a chance to compete and will probably start games at some point in his rookie season. If you're clicking Ty Simpson's name in this range, that's what you're hoping for, I think.
I think in terms of being able to play right away, absolutely. In terms of dumpster fire organizations that are really bad for quarterback progression, that's the worst case for me.
I mean, I just don't know how much of this like organizational failure I buy into. I buy into it a little, but like, I don't know. I like Todd Monken.
A lot.
The Browns have a lot of picks this year. I suspect they'll grab a wide receiver. You have Fan in there. You have Judd. I think the Browns are like kind of okay. I think the Cardinals are fine. The Jets roster situation is not bad. You have a really great wide receiver 1. You have an O-line that I wouldn't say is good, but it's young, so it could theoretically get good. And you have Breece Hall. I really don't like Aaron Glenn or Frank Reich is my issue with the Jets. It's just the coaching staff feels so stale. But Monken I do like, so I'm a little bit Browns optimistic if they could get a guy like this.
Well, I'm not, but look, I can see. I mean,
look,
Browns
you've never
draft
lost
Simpson,
money betting
Browns
against
start,
the Browns quarterback play.
I know. Browns draft Simpson, still somehow start Shador and or Watson through spring training, and then into like week 4, Simpson's late to the gas. They're already getting smoked. Then the difficult part of this, like, I can paint the picture on how the Browns screw it up. And I think that's where I'm going to remain out. Like, there's a path for them to completely blow out rather than just draft this guy, let Monken go, and teach him everything, get him every rep. I mean, we've heard first-team rep stories in Cleveland last year, and we saw how that worked out. So that's where I have the failure, is if I can paint the picture to complete and utter failure, I don't want him there. Like, again, the best case scenario is one of those late first teams that are actually a late first team that have a plan for him. So I like your take on it, on both the Jets and the Browns. It's just I'm going to have pause, I think, with any of those organizations. Let's talk about Surratt. I think he is somebody that we should discuss. We have them all pretty equal except for one person. Lucas 13, Ryan 14, I'm at 13. You have him at 18.
I know.
Jacob, lay your case.
I mean, the production profile is fine. I will say mostly my case is that he is, what was he your guys all had him at wide receiver 7? Is that right in this class?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I only had him maybe 1 or 2 spots lower than that in the wide receiver rankings. On trusty mock draft database, he sits currently at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, wide receiver 13. So that's basically my case, is I have no idea if this guy's getting drafted even on day 2. I'd be legitimately surprised if he gets drafted on round 2. And like, historically at the wide receiver position, once you get outside of the friendly draft capital range, the signal of the production profile tends to fade in a pretty big way. I'd obviously rather bet on a productive day 3 guy than an unproductive day 3 guy. But if you are new to the dynasty space and you didn't live through the Seth Williams era or Tyler Johnson era, or the what's the guy on the Ravens?
Tylan Wallace.
Tylan Wallace,
baby. Shout out Big Billy.
Every dynasty player has like a wide receiver or two that they fell in love with in March, and then went on day 3 of the draft, and you were like, wow, I can't believe that this guy got drafted here. He's way better than these guys. And it's like, for every Amon-Ra St. Brown where that turned out to be the case, there's like 15 other guys who had, your receiving yards per team pass attempt and a bag of chips gets you a bag of chips. So mostly I just would hate, if I was in a pre-draft rookie draft, to take Surratt early in the second round, and then like have my sphincter tighten on Friday afternoon as I'm like praying for him to come off at the 87th overall pick, so we don't have to talk about his selection on Saturday morning as Ryan's serving us up beverages. That's really just my reason. His production profile is fine. I know a lot of the film people seem to think that it's a bit fraudulent. Some people don't. I'm just trying to weight in his production profile, which is strong, versus the draft capital projection, which seems really, really risky. If he does go in the second round, I'll have him ranked much higher than this when we do our post-draft rankings. That's a promise.
I will say, shout out Tylan Wallace, overtime walk-off winner for the Baltimore Ravens against the Rams. We'll never forget you, King. Enjoy your time in Cleveland. I think you're right. I didn't even really think to look at it from the mock draft database standpoint and just kind of hedging the bet a little bit. Ryan, you have him sitting at 14, one spot above Lucas and I. So why don't you kind of give us the bridge the gap case, and I will change my ranking depending on what you and Jakob lay out here.
Okay, I mean, I'm going to give the pro Surratt case because I feel like I'm relatively high on him compared to most in the industry. Apparently not quite as high as Tom and Lucas, but I will take you on that, Jakob. I have him with a round 3 draft capital projection in my model. I literally pull from mock draft database to do the draft capital projections. I agree, if he falls to day 3, it's going to be a problem. I will immediately come off of this take, and I will be sweating on Friday night, exactly as you just laid out. But even if it's round 3, I'm okay with it. If you just look at the best production scores in my model by round 3 wide receivers, it's like a pretty decent list. It's Michael Gallup, it's Josh Downs, it's Tank Dell, Jalen Tolbert, not great, Kenny Golladay, Taywan Taylor, David Bell, not great, Deontay Johnson. Like, it's a pretty close to like a 50-50. This guy was a useful fantasy player at some point and gained dynasty value. I think if you give me like a 50-50 chance in this wide receiver class after the first 6 guys, I'm pretty happy to take that. I'm not sure I would even ascribe that to any of the other wide receivers that we might talk about today. So yeah, and my model says the same exact thing, that he's the wide receiver 7, weighting the draft capital and the production profile together. So I'm comfortable with that. I actually have him in his own tier among receivers, kind of alone in his own tier, below Omar Cooper, ahead of Chris Brazel. So yeah, I like Surratt quite a bit. All the things you can say about Cooper in terms of the efficiency and the target competition apply just as much to Surratt. I love making bets on these types of players where the stats overall could be weighed down by target competition, but it's like 2 of them at the same time, so they could actually both be really great. Those are just like the asymmetrical upside bets that I like making. The per route profile is genuinely really good. By first downs per route run, he's with like a bunch of guys that went on day 1 pretty much. over like historically over the past 5 to 10 years. So yeah, I'm really into Surratt. I would say that like the film people that I super trust, meaning Brett Whitefield, is also into Surratt. I understand that's not like a majority film community opinion, but I'm usually pretty happy to lean into it when the analytical profile and Brett's specific opinion line up. So that is also kind of driving my ranking of Surratt here. Yeah, that's pretty much what I'd say. It's kind of annoying because I like in a normal year I feel like I would be like downplaying this profile more as like a late, this is like the type of receiver you draft in the late second usually in dynasty rookie drafts. I feel like in normal years there would be people that are like way too into the spreadsheets that are taking him in round 1 or whatever. I don't even think it's like that crazy to do that this year, to take him like at the 1-2 turn, assuming he does go on day 2. So yeah, those are all my Surratt thoughts. Closest thing I have to a flag plant in this class, I think, maybe not if Tom and Lucas are representative of the wider community. I'm not sure they will be though. So yeah, I like me some Surratt.
All right. I have mixed emotions, and I'm going to have to spend some time now rethinking this as I sit back and edit this when we're done here. Let's talk about another player that we have a pretty decent discrepancy on here, and it's Chris Brazzell. I can't wait to talk about him. I feel like his price is going to really jump post NFL draft. Jacob, you and I both have him at 14. Ryan, you are the lowest at 17. Lucas, you have him at 16. That's Vols on Vols violence here. You really hate to see it. Brazzell's my favorite. Now, every year I seem to have another wide receiver that I tend to flag plant. It was Alec Pierce years ago. It was Tesla in his draft class.
You have a type, eh?
I have a type. And Brazzell's fitting this type for me.
I was just gonna say I've already comped. Did you see the post where I put Brazzell? No. I put Brazzell's season by season yards per team pass attempt, and I plotted it against Alec Pierce and Denzel Mims, and all three are like completely identical. Like the dots are like overlapping at all 4 years. And then I captioned it with the phrase, he will do one of these things.
McMillan was the other for me. So I tend to pick a wide receiver to really go. And I think it's Brazzell for me here. I think the NFL is adopting more of these multi-layer field stretchers. And I know the Tennessee offense is a bit gimmicky at times, but I really feel like he can kind of do everything Jameson Williams does on a maybe less technical level, if that makes sense. And I don't think he's as good a run blocker as Pierce, but we've seen how at least one team in the NFL values a player like Pierce. They can still be good for fantasy as well with the high explosive games. The floor probably not going to be where I like it to be, but if you look at mock draft database, which kind of just confirmed how I was feeling about him reaching that back end of round 1, early day in round 2, there's just going to be a lot to like. I've seen everything from Patriots at 31. I can only imagine what that would do for his price. San Francisco, a lot of the big names. There's Buffalo, which every time we mention we don't want a receiver there, I feel Jacob and his system visibly rejecting it like a bad a
do you
bad
know how
meal,
annoying
but
this was, by the way? For years, I've had to fight you on this. I've been like, I don't think that the Buffalo Bills are actually a bad system for wide receivers.
I know.
They just have bad receivers. And then they trade for like my least favorite player in the NFL. So like, I can't. It's not like I can be like, but DJ Moore will succeed because like I detest DJ Moore. So like, it's really annoying when something happens that I get caught in I get caught in take war amongst myself, and there's always casualties on both sides, which just means I die twice.
Which I will say this, I will change my narrative completely if Brazzell ends up in Buffalo, because strong arm chuck it deep for Brazzell is something I would be very excited for. But him ending up in the back end of round 1 on a contending team, I feel like is going to do wonders for his price. Now, he has to develop 100%, right? He is right now like early stage Alec Pierce, who was very much a 2-3 route player. I think Brazel can develop. If his upside is Alec Pierce and you're drafting him at the 202 in your rookie drafts this year, perfect. I think he's going to go into round 1 of Superflex rookie drafts immediately after the NFL draft. I truly believe this. I think he has great upside. I don't think he has that 17 point per game upside, but again, if you're in a pre-NFL draft rookie draft, I'm happy getting 13, 14 points per game with explosive upside in that second round. And I feel like he can get there on the right team.
Yeah, that's mostly, especially what you were saying early, is where I end up a little bit higher than most of the folks on Brazel. It's just, I'm pretty sure he's going to go top 40, and I don't have any route share concerns because he's huge and he works downfield. Yeah. And so it feels like it gives me somewhat of a floor to like see what he's going to do and then probably trade him because his production profile is extremely questionable. One guy who I don't have any confidence in getting an every down role, but that who Lucas and I have, this is the funniest ranking on the whole sheet to me because Lucas and I ranked him exactly the same at 17, and you guys both had him all the way down at 33, a round and a half lower. Pulling up mock draft database, he is currently projected to be wide receiver 9 off the board in the second round. It is Mr. Screen Pass, Zachariah Branch. I've already talked plenty, so Lucas, I'll trust you to carry the flag. We are all Zachariah Branch.
Devi Bayless Jones.
I don't even like Zachariah Branch, which is like the craziest thing.
Well,
I had no idea.
Well, it looks like you do, Lucas. So you do.
No
Say
idea
good things.
That
you like
would
him?
be here.
Yes, you do.
So if we're looking just at where he's going in terms of ADP, right now he's going in the mid-second round in Dynasty startups as of today, or in Dynasty rookie drafts. And so like 17... yeah, like 17, like I feel like even like a little high, but I don't actually like him. I can just see that there's absolutely a role for him in the NFL. And I'm hoping that a creative offensive coordinator, because this is 2026, NFL's supposed to be fun, dadgummit. I'm hoping that somebody will see this as just a super twitched up, ridiculously fast former 5-star recruit who is productive. I believe he got more money than any other wide receiver in the transfer portal last season. The guy is just really
put that
good.
in your model, Ryan. Yeah, put the NIL money in your model.
I mean, might as well at this point in time, but like he has a role. He's an awesome return specialist. Like this guy's going to get touches, even if they have to be manufactured. I don't care about his route running. Like I truly don't. This guy is just ridiculously explosive, and that's at least fun. And whenever we're talking about so much uncertainty with all these wide receivers who the production, like you really have to start to squint a little bit to get like production outliers that make you feel good about, wanting to be in the mid-second round. He's at least ridiculously fast. He is an excellent athlete, and that's fun. So let's have fun.
Branch is like, it's like you get home and your girlfriend is like, hey, like I got you a Corvette. And you're like, oh my God, like incredible. And then they're like, don't look under the hood. And I'm like, well, that's weird you said that. But that's fine. And you're like driving it and you're like, oh, like this is pretty fun. Like, looks nice. Like I can feel the breeze. I'm in my convertible. It's all bright yellow. Like I feel like a boss. And then it's like, the check engine light is flashing. You're like getting like a smoke coming out of the front of the car. Like that is concerning. And like eventually the car's probably going in the road, but like maybe not. Maybe everything's fine. If you just don't check under the hood, everything could be fine. It's like he's a 5-star recruit, early declare, with over 2 career yards per route run. And if you don't ask any other questions, that sounds pretty great. If you look at any of the flashing lights, then you start to have concerns. But the less you look at the profile, the better you feel.
If you just don't ask yourself like what he did on a football field at the college level, then he's amazing. Is basically what you're saying.
The song by Tame Impala, The Less I Know, the Better? That's Zachariah Branch. And yet I know less than you guys, so I haven't ranked a lot higher.
All right, I'll speak on this quick. I wrote maybe the most hateful and spiteful blurb of my entire life on Zachariah Branch the other day, so I just want to share some of this. He weighed 177 pounds at the combine. After round one, the most productive sub 180 pound wide receiver outcomes that we have basically top out at Josh Downs and Darnell Mooney. So that's like big strike number one, is he's probably not big enough to play a legitimate every down role in the league. My next issue is he has the highest screen target rate of any drafted power conference wide receiver for at least the last decade, and it's by like multiple percentage points. The entire list is like him, Ray McLeod, Anthony Schwartz, Amari Rogers, Kadarius Toney, Rondale Moore, Dominic Lovett, Wan'Dale Robinson, Velus Jones is like number 10. That's not great to me either. All he could do was screens in college, essentially. There's just no reason to think he can play like a real NFL role to me outside of being a returner and a design play gadget guy. The only player in the NFL that averaged more than 4 fantasy points per game on screens was Rashee Rice last year. I just don't see it. I don't value this profile whatsoever for fantasy. I hate Zachariah Branch. He's the worst wide receiver of all time.
Yeah, I know Malachi Corley when I see him.
Worst wide receiver of all time. Because it's like this is the exact type of receiver that I'm constantly baited by. Like if you have good per route, I mean it's not even great per route production honestly, but like if you have like reasonable per route production and you like have a really cool like jump step move and agility, I'm like probably pretty interested. And I totally get why an NFL team is going to draft this guy in the second round. He is probably like a 40% snap share McCole Hardman type, but I don't know.
Kadarius Toney?
If you really squint. Yeah, he's very Kadarius Toney. Also, have you guys played with him in CFB 26? Like he's unreal in that video game. He is so good.
Yeah, well, we know the Jets use video games for their rankings. Maybe you'll get lucky and nice solid second round pick for the
Tom,
New
how
York Jets.
how familiar are you with Malachi Toney? Because he's a 2028 receiver who is like also in this archetype of receiver. Like he's like a small, ridiculous yak demon, and it's like feels like a meme that his name is just like a composite of Malachi Corley and Kadarius Toney.
I thought you were making that up. I thought you were just making up
he was like the best freshman wide receiver in college football last year. He's on Miami. And he's like really good.
Of course he is.
But it's legitimately hilarious that his name is Malachi Toney.
Well, we're going to revisit this come for the,
so
the 2028
in 2 years,
draft class.
we're going to have just nonstop jokes about Malachi, Kadarius, Toney, Corley.
Well, Lucas had to leave for an engagement party, but we just have 2 more notes here that I wanted to get out. I think of running backs that I think could make the jump into the number 2 slot. I believe Mike Washington Jr. is one of them. I think that an NFL team could quite possibly just fall in love with his straight line speed. And really one of the only things we've referenced it a bunch of times, is the mock draft database. I think he could be a shoo-in here for the Seattle job here in the second round. I've seen as high as pick 32. That's not going to happen. But a running back does seem to really get boosted up. I think round 3 to a more ambiguous backfield could really push him right up just with the speed and breakaway stuff alone. Like Jacob mentioned with Branch, don't look at a lot of other things here in terms of that athletic profile, but the straight line speed is kind of undeniable. So I think he can really make a significant jump, but I think the most slept on running back in this class is actually Nick Singleton. I think he's awesome. I think not being able to test has drastically hurt his stock. I think I'm probably going to be at an 80% rostership. I think he's awesome. I think he can do everything. Explosive player. It was not that long ago where he was regarded as the next man up from Penn State. I love him. I think he's going to be a steal for whoever drafts him late. I want him late in every rookie draft that I have. I think he's completely sick. I think he can do everything. Catch passes, block, runs well. Those are my last two takes. My last two takes here at the end on two running backs. We just really didn't talk about that many.
Yeah, I don't really have any takes on these running backs. I think they're all bad. I have to write about them this week. I've been procrastinating it.
Well, just remember those two lines, and it's gonna be a miserable week. Like I have to write about writing about the rookie running back class is probably my favorite thing to do annually, and I hate this class. Like it's like ruining Christmas. But Ryan, the biggest trend that I saw, and Tom was with you on most of these. Both of you two ranked the mid tier of tight ends pretty consistently higher than Lucas or I. I mean, I was the highest on my guy Max Clare, but after that, Ryan was the highest on Justin Jolly. He was the highest on Tanner Koziol. He was tied with Tom for being the highest on Michael Trigg. He was the highest on Sam Roosh, and on each of those, Tom was 1 or 2 spots behind only. So why don't you guys talk to me about the tight end middle class here and why you were preferring them over a lot of these wide receivers. For audio listeners, we won't get into all of them today, but some of the guys that I was ranking above these tight ends were Antonio Williams, Ted Hurst, those kind of wide receivers. Yeah, I can say mine really quick. Tight end premium, it does not take much. These tight ends could have a 2-week stretch where they are tight end 8 and they tight end 12 and they skyrocket in value. I'm just pretty confident in that. Like, it didn't take much for Taylor, right, with the Jets. He had a couple of games, and all of a sudden, even myself, I fall for these guys on a regular basis. Talk about
Taylor's going to be
archetypes.
The guy that pisses me off on our show all year this year. He's going to be the new Theo Johnson of some guy in our comment being like, "Why won't anyone respect Mason Taylor?" He's going to be the new bane of my existence.
Me. It's not going to be in the comments. It's just going to be me. But I do tend to fall for these guys. If you remember, Jacob, when we first started this, I like tight ends more than you do across the board. That's where I'm at with these guys. It's just a position you can capitalize pretty quickly on in Dynasty. People are always kind of starving for that next tight end. So if you show anything, I mean, in my opinion, look where we're at with Gadsden. I think he had a couple of game run out that was pristine, and you can't. If you say something negative about him now at all, your comment section is blown up. So I don't think it takes much to have these middle-class tight ends really move up in value and on draft boards at all. So that's kind of where I have them. It's a safety thing, in my opinion.
I would mostly add on to that. I'd say that me kind of ranking all these tight ends in like the late second, early third tier, that's not so much me saying like, oh, I'm really excited to have late seconds to draft all these tight ends with. It's more me saying I think all these guys are going to go like in the third, and I'd be really happy to draft all of them there. Of course, my rankings are my rankings. Those are the selections I would make right now if I was at that spot on the clock in a pre-draft rookie draft. But yeah, the thing with the tight ends is part of it is, they only need like 3 or 4 games strung together to have value in tight end premium, as we saw with Oronde Gadsden. The other part of it is that even of the guys that are maybe not like serious every down NFL tight ends, which is most of the names that you just listed, it still only takes like a few games and they have dynasty value. Like, I don't think the entire community has like caught up to the Max Toscano kind of way of thinking of, do these guys actually have long-term value on like any other team if they're not going to block in line and all that. I don't think most dynasty managers think that way. I think most of them see the fantasy points within like a month and they get pretty happy, as you can see from Oronde Gadsden, from Isaiah Likely holding all this value that he has for as long as he has. So yeah, I think it's
for 3
I
games.
think you just have like 4 tight ends that are like souped up like better versions of Isaiah Likely as a prospect. I directly comped Jolie to Likely, and Brett Whitefield did the same exact thing based on film, had the same take. It's similar with Michael Trigg, similar with Tanner Koziel. These guys just have generally very high reception shares, generally very high like missed tackle forced metrics, at least per game, and like a volume sense. Like those things are predictive of fantasy points at the next level. And I get at the tight end position why the NFL would maybe see those guys as like day 3 values. Yet they can have fantasy value against like the day 3 running backs, wide receivers, especially in classes where I don't think most of the day 3 players are any good, or most of the day 2 players are any good. I just rather bet on like those flash in the pan tight ends a little bit. The exceptions to this, I guess, are Roosh, who I think has a legitimate receiving profile. He's one of the most athletic tight ends we've seen that is his size in a long time. He had like legit reception shares at Stanford, even if like the efficiency wasn't there. It was a mess of an offense. I can explain that away. And Jack Endries, I think, is a legitimately really interesting profile. Had arguably the best, I think it was sophomore season at Cal. His year at Cal was amazing from a statistical perspective, age adjusted, kind of got hurt and was inconsistent the following year, but still declared. He's someone that I think could go like even on day 2, like kind of earlier than the mock draft consensus expects. He's another like interesting one in this kind of group. So yeah, I'm still like driving myself nuts over how I order some of these guys. I'm editing my tight end article as we speak right now, finalizing rankings, but it's just like whatever order it's in, I'm way more confident these guys are good players than when I have to look at an Antonio Williams or a Skylar Bell or what, like any of these running backs, really, a Mike Washington. Like, yeah, just give me the guys I think are good players that can flash and get dynasty value from that over the more premium positions, quote unquote, that I think like the median outcome for a lot of these guys is we like never hear from them after training camp.
As much as we think this wide receiver class sucks, like I don't know how prepared everybody is for the fact that we're probably going to get like 16 to 17 wide receivers gone on the first 2 days. Like I get everyone thinks that they suck.
Yeah.
But like they're getting drafted. And I don't know, some of them I don't totally hate. Like I Ted Hurst is a guy that continues to pop, is interesting for me. Played at a really small school, but like the production profile is solid. Antonio Williams, another one that's interesting for me, like high pedigree recruit player, early declare, production profile is not great, but it's okay. There's freshman production that I can talk myself into. I tend to be kind of non-moved by most of the middle class of the tight end position, and I'm concerned about route share for a lot of these guys. I'm probably higher than like Ryan is, maybe even on like Oscar Delp or like Eli Raridan. But we'll get into all these tight ends soon, because I think we have Max on in a couple of weeks, and then we'll have Graham on to talk about running backs. We'll have Scott on just ahead of the NFL draft, and so we got a lot more to come if we didn't get to every single person today. But this was a fun exercise.
Yeah, you heard it here first. Jacob hates the middle class. With that being said, I want to give a huge shout out to Lucas, who managed to squeeze in some time here. We missed Lucas here on the program. Can't wait for the lives to kick back. You can follow the rest of Ryan's rookie content, fantasypoints.com. We had people asking in our Discord, which is free right now. The link is in the description where you can find that. That's always at Thinking About Thinking. All that and more coming with the Fantasy Points YouTube channel and the Fantasy Points podcast network. Tons of stuff over there even now, and more to come, including Brett Whitefield's prospect guide. Can't wait for that to drop. Leave a comment, let us know what you did or didn't like here on YouTube. You can do the same thing over on Spotify. 5-star reviews goes a long way. You can hit the subscribe button. This channel is growing very quickly. It is free to do, and it helps us more than we can really tell you. That being said, remember that clear eyes and full hearts can never lose. Your best days, well, they're always spent tilting. We'll see you guys next time.